you smoke it?
Spraying is RNG, right? Well, not really.
Too long.
Unfortunately, the game doesn't really teach you how to spray, but I'm here to do that instead. There is a lot of misinformation out there, and I don't want you to build bad habits because of that. So let's jump right in. Let's start with first bullet accuracy and spread. Before we talk about spraying, we need to understand how spread works, because spread is a huge part of spraying. Spread is simply a game mechanic where your bullets don't go in the exact same spot every time. Instead, they have a certain level of error. Spread exists mainly to keep rifles in check to not make them overpowered. I have some great news. The game actually has options to show you the spread for every single weapon in the game. Sadly, this will likely change your crosshair, but I highly recommend you use these settings until you get the hang of spraying and spread in general. After that, you can revert to your original settings. Okay, so you wanna go to your crosshair settings. Under inner lines, you wanna turn inner line offset all the way to 0. This will leave no gap in your crosshair. And then in the same section, you will see firing error. Turning this on will now show you 100 accurate representation of your weapon spread. Your crosshair gap now shows every single spot of where your bullet can land. Try it out. Use any weapon you like as long as you are not spraying. There is a little bit of a difference when you are spraying, but I will get to that one later. You will now notice that your bullet isn't 100% accurate. It doesn't matter what weapon you have, it doesn't matter if you are standing completely still, there is a little bit of inaccuracy. This is due to the spread. Spread affects first shot accuracy, bursting and spraying. Now you can see why we had to understand spread before starting talking about anything else. To make things easier, I'm going to break down spraying into 3 different sections. The first section is really simple, the first 3 bullets. You only need to do a very slight pull downwards and you will be accurate. For the second section, I want to remind you about spread, because spread does affect this. You do need to worry about the vertical aspect mostly, but you need to keep in mind that spread will affect your horizontal recoil as well this time. So this section is between the 3rd and the 8th bullet, before the RNG horizontal recoil kicks in. In order to compensate for it, you need to remember that you need to pull down about twice as much compared to the first section. This does mean that the first 2 sections are quite easy to control, because all you really need to worry about is the vertical element of spraying. The 3rd section is when you can stop worrying about verticality and you only need to worry about horizontal spraying. Contrary to popular belief, you can in fact compensate for this RNG. There are 2 ways to do this. One of them is to look at your weapon's way. The gun direction matches the direction of where your bullets are going. This doesn't work, but it's a little bit inefficient. Why? Because your attention needs to be divided in too many directions. You actually have to look at 2 places at the same time, which is not great if you haven't noticed. As I've said though, there are 2 ways to compensate for horizontal recoil. The bullets will always be above your crosshair, but there's a catch. Spread is still present, it always is. If you remember what I've said earlier, you can get more consistent sprays however. I've said that spread will always be within the crosshair gap, except for this one tiny exception. The bullets will be above the top section of your crosshair. However, the horizontal aspect still applies. This is important to know, because here is a representation of where your bullets will go considering you know this information. Spread doesn't usually go to extremities. It can happen, but most of the time it will be fairly centered. That means that if you do your best to keep your crosshair in the middle, then most of your spray will actually land on the target. Notice the keyword most. Some bullets will miss, because RNG. Okay, so for rifles you only need to worry about these 3 sections. Doesn't it sound much easier now that you break them down like that? Let's do a quick recap. For the first section you only need to pull slightly. For the second section you need to pull about twice as much compared to the first section. And the third section, your bullets will go above your crosshair. You do need to keep in mind however that spread will affect both the second and the third section. Okay, now let's talk about practice. As I've already mentioned, I highly recommend you use both firing error and crosshair offset when you get the hang of spraying. After you get the hang of it, you can revert to your original settings. If you are completely new, you can start with the old spraying at the wall like I've done during this video. When you get bored of that, it's time to jump into DM and practice there. Even if it doesn't happen that often, I do recommend that you also practice the third section, because there is a off chance that you will need sometimes to use it, and if you know the information I gave you, it can save the round. One thing to keep in mind is that due to spread, spraying becomes more and more random the longer the distance you use it. So you should find a sweet spot where spraying is still viable for you. I hope I helped you understand spraying to a deeper level and see that even if there are no patterns, there are still quite a lot of factors that you can control when talking about spraying. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to check out my other content as well.